My CEO girlfriend of 5 years doubted my loyalty. She demanded I collect 10,000 blessings from strangers before she'd marry me. But when Marcus, the man she truly obsessed over, the one she'd broken up with 3 times, asked her to marry him on a dare, she couldn't wait to make their relationship official, splashing it across every major screen in the city. My mom, who'd just come to the city to meet my fiance, was so enraged she suffered a heart attack and ended up in the hospital. I rushed to the announcement site, falling to my knees, begging Vivian to return my savings for mom's medical bills. But she frowned, saying that once my money was in her hands, it was hers. She had no obligation to pay for my family's expenses, telling me to figure it out myself. Then, right in front of me, she used my money to order Marcus a luxury car because I couldn't pay on time. Mom missed her window for treatment and died tragically in the hospital morgue. I buried her with tears in my eyes, accepted an offer from a major overseas company, and submitted my resignation. Vivian, though, just thought I was throwing a tantrum. She casually said, "Where else would a guy your age go without me? Don't play your little games with me. I'll take your mom out for a few days later just doing my duty as your future daughter-in-law." But when she saw me at the airport, why did her eyes turn red and why did she fall to her knees begging for my forgiveness? After my visa was approved, I went home to pack. The moment I opened my closet, Vivian popped out, startling me. "Alex, I'm the hunter, and I've caught my prey." She was beaming, her cheeks flushed, laughing heartily. I knew she'd used a business trip as an excuse these past 2 days, but she was really just traveling with Marcus to avoid me. In the past, I would have greeted her with a warm smile, asking about her trip. Now I just pulled her aside and started rummaging for my clothes. Vivian stood there, looking a bit lost. After a long moment, she poked my arm. "Alex, what's wrong? Are you still mad about me not lending you money that day?" I was trying to complete Marcus's dare. We're friends and he was about to lose in 15 minutes. I didn't have time to transfer money. Didn't I soften up later and have the finance department give you an advance? I gave a bitter laugh, suppressing the sting in my nose, and kept stuffing clothes into my suitcase. Vivian saw I wasn't speaking, snatched the clothes from my hands, and threw them onto the bed. "That's what I dislike about you small-town guys. You're so petty. You hand over a few 100,000 and then you try every trick to get it back. Honestly, I bought Marcus that sports car just to cut off your idea of getting into my pockets." My heart felt like it was squeezed hard. I took a deep breath. I thought if I just poured my heart out and gave her all my earnings, Vivian would eventually let go of her suspicions. But I never imagined she still thought I was after her money. Marcus and she had broken up and gotten back together 3 times. Each time it was her winning him back with luxury cars and lavish homes. So why was it suddenly me who was being petty? I finished packing, picked up my suitcase, and curled my lips into a sarcastic smile. "It won't happen again. Keep your money for Marcus to spend." Vivian's eyes widened. She grabbed me, crushed. A storage box was knocked over, sending countless paper slips covered with blessings fluttering to the ground like snow. These were all the blessing messages. I had pleaded with anyone and everyone I met on the street to write for me. She had said she'd had enough heartbreak. Unless I collected 1,000 blessings from strangers to prove my sincerity, she wouldn't marry me. The 10,000th blessing was from a passenger sitting next to my mom on the train ride into the city. When mom handed it to me, she wished Vivian and me a long and happy life together. But Vivian still announced her relationship with Marcus just because of one sentence from him. All my boundaries, all my efforts were a joke. Vivian picked up a slip of paper. Her beautiful brows relaxed and she sighed. "All right, Alex, stop sulking. I'll give you another 300. Take your mom to get some nice clothes and good food later. I'll take her on a trip. I'll do my duty as a daughter-in-law." In the past, I would have taken the out and praised her as a good wife, but now the bitterness in my heart wouldn't let up. I just couldn't swallow it. I covered her transfer screen with my hand and said coldly, "No need, you're not her daughter-in-law, we're over." My words were swallowed by the sound of a key in the lock. "Vivian, I'm here to pick you up. Didn't we say we treat everyone to dinner to celebrate?" Marcus walked in looking surprised. "Assistant Alex, why are you at Vivian's place?" Vivian coughed, putting distance between us. Alex's mom needed money, he just asked if he could get an advance on his salary. We'd been in a secret relationship for 5 years. She always kept me at arm's length and I couldn't even post about her on Ins. I thought it was because she didn't want an office romance. Turns out about keeping it from everyone was just about keeping it from him. Marcus looked righteous and reprimanded me sharply. "Assistant Alex, don't go too far. I didn't even say anything about you causing a scene at the announcement, but you have hands and feet. You can't just take advantage of Vivian's kindness and demand money from her." Vivian frowned, about to speak. I curled my lips. "You're right, that's exactly what I think, so I'm leaving now." With that, I picked up my suitcase and walked past Vivian, heading downstairs. She took a step as if to follow, glanced at Marcus, then calmly said, "Be careful on your way." As I walked out of the building, Vivian sent me a Snapchat message. "Alex, don't worry, this is the last time I'll help Marcus out. I'll make time in a couple of days to take your aunt out and we can discuss our wedding plans and get married soon." I scoffed. I just opened my chat with William, the HR from the overseas company. "William, my visa is done. Flight's tomorrow afternoon, see you there." I hailed a cab to the company to pick up my files, but the HR officer looked impatient. "CEO Vivian has been holding up your resignation application. Come back next Monday to ask again." I called Vivian, but it just rang busy. It was always like this when she was with Marcus. I should have waited for her to approve my resignation before rushing off earlier. Frustrated, I frowned and left the company behind me. A burst of laughter erupted when Mr. Marcus and CEO Vivian made their relationship official. He was there singing and dancing, even kneeling and begging Vivian for money. So embarrassing. Didn't you see how awful his face looked when he couldn't get through to CEO Vivian just now? If I were her, I'd block a leech like that too. I was used to these mocking words by now. My phone pinged with a notification, a taunting message from Marcus. The photo showed the blessing slip stuffed into a reeking greasy trash can. Vivian threw away all 10,000 blessings just because I said so. I heard you spend a year collecting them. So much effort. How sad. So what if you dated for 5 years? The moment I came back, you were kicked to the curb. She's eating with me right now, peeling shrimp for me, her hands covered in sauce. You've never seen that, have you? If you're curious, come to the restaurant's private room, I'll let you see all you want. My hand tightened around my phone. Since he'd returned, I'd seen too many messages like this. Vivian, who was a clean freak and so proud, would wash his clothes, cook for him, and even wash his feet and make his bed. Before, I used to dread Marcus's messages, yet I'd self-torture myself by watching Vivian's special treatment of him. I even tried to tell myself it was all photoshopped, telling him not to stir up trouble, thinking if I didn't see the truth, I could keep lying to myself. This time I went not out of jealousy, but to get Vivian to sign my resignation and sever all ties with her. Half an hour later, I arrived at the restaurant only to hear Vivian arguing with someone in the stairwell. I instinctively hid around the corner. Vivian, are you out of your mind? Marcus dumped you 3 times, each time worse than the last. He even tricked you to a cliff and almost broke your leg. And you're making it official with him. Alex has been with you for 5 years and you never gave him a title. Don't forget he risked his life to save you before. It was Sasha, Vivian's best friend. I touched the uneven scar on my forehead. A year ago, Vivian and I were in a car accident during a business trip. To protect her, I was impaled by the windshield. I had a dozen steel plates implanted in my body, and scar above my left eyebrow disfigured me, making my formerly gentle eyes look fierce. Colleagues secretly called me Scarface, kept their distance, and even spread rumors that I was beaten by loan sharks. Vivian, however, never clarified anything to avoid suspicion. The next second, Vivian's reply struck me like a lightning bolt. It's because he had the car accident. He has a scar over his eye. He doesn't look like Marcus anymore. Sasha was furious. So you were still treating him as a substitute? No wonder when he proposed, you made him do an impossible task. 10,000 blessings. Even if he asked 30 people a day, it would take a year. If you didn't want to marry him, you didn't have to string him along. What kind of spell did a scumbag like Marcus put on you? Enough. Vivian snapped, her voice sharp. Don't you dare slander Marcus like that. He said he's turned over a new leaf. I'm just trying to make up for past regrets. Give me 2 more days and I'll break it off with him. Sasha was speechless. Aren't you afraid Alex will truly give up? Vivian seemed relaxed, in control. Alex's job came from me. He lives in my apartment. He has nothing without me. I'll take responsibility for him. We've been out too long. Marcus will get impatient. Let's head back. Watching their retreating figures, I stood there for a long time, then sank to the floor, holding myself. When Mom got sick, I brought her to the city for treatment. When I was desperate because we had no money, Vivian was the one who approached me, inviting me to work at her company. She was gentle and compassionate, like a goddess, and I fell for her. Now looking back, I was wearing a mask then, only my eyes visible, and her eyes were filled with the joy of finding something she'd lost. Whenever she mentioned her ex, Vivian would gnash her teeth full of love and hate. Then she'd bury her head against my chest, sighing how lucky she was to have me. After Marcus returned to the country, she deliberately ran into him several times, clashing with him, but their arguments were just her way of flirting and showing how much she missed him. No wonder Vivian suddenly became distant after the car accident. I was foolish, thinking it was because Marcus was back and she was just conflicted. Turns out the original was back and I, the substitute, was useless, which was why she made me collect 10,000 blessings to politely reject me. After a while, I took a deep breath and pushed open the private room door. Inside, everyone was already tipsy, clapping and cheering. Their dramatic reunion, their intense, complicated love. I'm totally hooked. Vivian, you have to kiss Marcus. Vivian openly kissed Marcus on the lips. Her long lashes trembled and her ears turned crimson, betraying her racing heart. She didn't know how long it had been until the cheering died down. She opened her eyes in confusion. She saw me standing behind Marcus, my face emotionless. She shot up, her face pale. Alex, I can explain everything, it's not what you think. Her attempt to cover it up just made her look incredibly guilty. Vivian, we're done. The next second, I pulled out my resignation application. Also, please sign this so I can leave the company. Vivian was flustered. Everyone in the room looked on with mixed expressions, some hesitating, wanting to advise me. But then Marcus swept the drinks and fruit bowls off the table, looking utterly humiliated. You two are a couple. Vivian froze. Her hand hovered in midair, unsure whether to reach for mine or slap the resignation paper away. Her lips trembled, caught between denial and panic. For a moment, no one in the room moved. The sound of Marcus's heavy breathing filled the silence like a slow ticking bomb. You two are a couple, Marcus repeated, but this time, it was less of a question and more of a revelation. His face twisted, not with jealousy, but with something worse, entitlement. Vivian stepped back, wringing her hands. Marcus, it wasn't serious. Alex and I. It was just a phase. I didn't want to be alone. You left, remember? I chuckled. It was bitter, dry, hollow. The kind of laugh that echoes louder in an empty chest. 5 years, Vivian. A phase? Alex, please. Her voice broke as she turned to me. It was complicated. You knew I was still healing from Marcus. I never wanted to hurt you. I placed the resignation on the table, flat and firm. You made me a stand-in for a man who left you. You took my savings while my mother was dying. You had me beg in front of the entire city while you bought Marcus a car with the money I gave you in love. Stop, Vivian cried out, but the damage was already done. The room felt suffocating now. Even the other guests, who moments earlier had been toasting her love story, looked uncomfortable. I don't want your explanations, I said. I want my freedom. Sign it. Vivian's face hardened, her eyes flickering with that CEO sharpness I knew too well. You think leaving will make you the victim? You think people will pity you? No, I replied quietly. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for peace. She didn't sign. Instead, she whispered, I won't let you go. Then Marcus grabbed the resignation and ripped it in half. Get out, he hissed. So I did. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back, not even when Vivian ran after me calling my name. I didn't need to see her face to know what it looked like: regret, confusion, loss. But none of that mattered anymore. Not to me. I walked to the main road, hailed a cab, and checked my flight again. Tomorrow. Just one more night in this city that had taken everything from me. That night, I stayed at a cheap motel near the airport. No 5-star hotel like the ones Vivian used to book for business trips. Just a stiff bed, flickering ceiling light, and silence. The perfect place to mourn 5 years of my life. At midnight, a knock sounded at the door. I didn't answer. Again, 3 taps. I approached cautiously, half expecting it to be Marcus with one last pathetic attempt to assert dominance. But it was Sasha. Her makeup was smudged, and she looked like she had run here. Alex, she whispered. She's gone crazy. She canceled tomorrow's executive meetings and locked herself in her office. I leaned against the doorframe. And? She's crying, Sasha said. Crying, Alex. Vivian doesn't cry. Not even when her dog died. I didn't reply. She's been reading those blessing slips, Sasha continued. She didn't throw them away. Marcus did. She went back and picked every one out of the trash. I turned away, biting the inside of my cheek. She's not okay, Sasha insisted. She's not eating. She hasn't changed clothes. She kept murmuring about your mom. About how she should have done something. How you'll never forgive her now. My jaw clenched. She's right. I won't. Sasha sighed. Do what you want, Alex. But at least know the truth. I closed the door without another word. The next morning, my phone buzzed with dozens of missed calls. Vivian. Sasha. The company HR. Then came a new message from William overseas. Alex, we just received a block from your employer. They're refusing to process final documentation. We're appealing, but it'll delay everything by a few weeks. Are you sure there's no way to resolve this? My shoulders dropped. So Vivian was holding me hostage professionally now. I headed straight to the office, my suitcase still in hand. The receptionist fell silent when I entered. News must have spread. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual. When I walked in, the hallway was dim. Vivian's assistant tried to stop me. She's not seeing anyone. She'll see me. I pushed past and opened the door. Vivian was curled up on the couch in her office, the curtains drawn. Her usual pristine suit was wrinkled, her eyes swollen from crying. On the coffee table were all 10,000 blessing slips, cleaned, ironed, and sorted. I didn't throw them away, she said softly. I swear I didn't. Marcus did, I answered. You let him. She flinched. Vivian, you held up my resignation. Why? I'm afraid, she admitted. Not of losing a worker. Of losing the one person who ever stayed. I shook my head. You only stayed with me because Marcus left. You came to me when you were heartbroken, and I made the mistake of thinking I could heal you. But I was just a placeholder. That's not true. She stood. I fell for you. But I was scared. I never knew if I loved you, or loved the version of Marcus I imagined you to be. And now? She looked at me. Now I know. I love you, Alex. Not as a stand-in. Not as a small-town guy. As you. I stepped closer. I buried my mother because you didn't believe me. Because your ego and games mattered more than her life. Do you know what that did to me? She broke down, sobbing. I didn't know she'd die. I didn't know you needed the money that badly. I was trying to prove a point. And I failed. I failed you. You failed yourself. I placed a new resignation letter on her desk. Sign it. Don't make this uglier than it already is. Vivian reached for the pen with trembling fingers. You're really going? Yes. What if I said I'd give up Marcus? That I'd dissolve everything, start from scratch? I shook my head. You should have thought about that before buying him a car with the money I gave you for my mother. She signed. I turned to leave. One last thing, she whispered. The 10,000th blessing. It was from your mom, right? I paused at the door. I found her note inside one of the slips. She said she hoped I'd take care of you. That you were always too kind. That she prayed every night you'd never be alone. I closed my eyes. Too late for that now, I said. And walked out. Hours later, as I waited at the boarding gate, I stared at the final blessing message in my hand, my mom's neat handwriting wishing me joy with Vivian. I folded it once, then again, and tucked it in my passport. The announcement called for boarding. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Alex. Vivian's voice rang out. But I didn't turn. Some goodbyes don't deserve answers. I stepped onto the plane. And didn't look back. The plane lifted off the tarmac with a deep rumble, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to relief. Not happiness, not yet. But release. The cabin lights dimmed, and I leaned back in my seat, gripping the folded blessing message from Mom. My thumb brushed over the indentation of her handwriting. The words blurred as exhaustion set in. I didn't even remember closing my eyes. When I woke up, the plane had landed. A foreign city, foreign sounds, foreign air. But none of it scared me. I had nothing left to lose. William met me at the airport with a firm handshake and a cautious smile. Jet lag? Not enough to stop me, I said. He led me to a sleek black car, and we drove through a city that glittered with ambition. Towers of glass, roads that hummed with precision, people who moved like they had places to be and something to prove. You'll be staying at the company residence for now, William explained. Everything's been arranged. Once your ID card is issued, we'll onboard you officially. That night, I stared at the ceiling of my minimalist apartment, the white sheets too crisp, the silence too absolute. In the distance, I heard faint laughter. Someone was living. I wasn't yet. The next morning, my new team greeted me with polite curiosity. Engineers, analysts, and a few rising stars with resumes longer than novels. None of them knew who I was. None of them knew about Vivian, Marcus, or the scar above my left eye. Good morning, Mr. Avart, one of them said. It took me a second to recognize my own name. I nodded. The first few days passed in a blur. Meetings. Prototypes. Product specs. I buried myself in work. I reviewed old systems and spotted weak points no one else had noticed. Within a week, I drafted a new architecture plan that reduced back-end latency by 60%. William stopped by my desk. Where the hell have you been hiding? You work like you've got something to prove. I do, I said simply. He grinned and left me to it. In private, though, my chest was tight every time I opened my inbox. Not because of Vivian. I had blocked her. But Sasha had sent 2 messages. Short. Polite. Almost hesitant. The first read. She's not doing well. She broke things off with Marcus. He tried to hit her. She filed a report. The second. She quit. She left the company 3 days after you did. Said she needed to grow on her own. I didn't reply. Because the part of me that cared was buried too deep to reach. 2 months passed. The company awarded me the Architect of the Quarter title. I was invited to present at a major summit. The CEO shook my hand, and our photo ended up on the cover of the internal bulletin. My inbox was filled with congratulations. Colleagues who used to avoid me at Vivian's office now reached out asking for my opinion. Brilliant work, one senior director wrote. Let's discuss a patent proposal. Looking forward to seeing what you do next, another said. I sat in the conference room, watching the city lights flicker beyond the window. I should have felt proud. I should have felt something. But all I could hear was the sound of my mother's voice, soft, warm, reminding me not to skip meals, not to overwork myself, to wear a scarf when it rained. She never got to see me succeed. And Vivian? Well, she never believed I would. It was a cold Saturday evening when I passed a bookstore tucked between a coffee shop and a florist. Something about the place called to me. Maybe it was the way the light spilled out warmly. Maybe it was the quiet. I stepped inside, scanning the shelves absently. In the corner, a display caught my eye. 1,000 Roads to Healing by V.L. Hart. The author photo made my chest tighten. Vivian. Her real name was Vivian Loretta Hart. I picked up the book. The blurb read. A deeply personal journey of learning to let go, seek forgiveness, and face the wreckage of the lives we hurt. I turned to the dedication. For the man who showed me what love was, even when I didn't deserve it. My hands shook slightly. I should have put the book back. But I carried it to the register. The clerk smiled. Great choice. Signed copy too. She did a reading here last week. Heartbreaking stuff. Did she mention why she wrote it? Not directly. But she said something about messing up the best thing that ever happened to her. Everyone cried. I walked out of the store with the book under my arm. At home, I left it on the counter for hours. But before bed, I opened the first page. The opening chapter began with our first meeting, almost word for word. He wore a mask. It was winter. I'd lost everything, and yet when I looked into his eyes, I felt like I was found. I read the whole book in one sitting. Each chapter was a confession. Of her jealousy. Her trauma. Her obsession with Marcus. Her selfishness. Her regret. And finally, her apology. He asked for so little. Just belief. Just trust. And I couldn't give it. Not until it was too late. Not until I held a blessing in my hand with his mother's handwriting and realized. I wasn't the one who had sacrificed. He was. The last page said. If this finds you, know that I've let go. But if you still hate me, I understand. Just don't forget how much you were loved, even if it came too late. I closed the book slowly. And for the first time in months, I let myself cry. Not for her. But for myself. For the years I spent giving. For the mother I buried. For the version of me that believed love would be enough. The next day, I booked a train ride out of the city. Not to run. But to think. As the scenery rushed by, I found myself remembering the smallest things, my mom's hands when she sewed the patches on my childhood jacket, the way she always double knotted my shoes, her proud smile the day I got my first internship. And something shifted in me. I took out the last blessing slip from my wallet. I read it again. To my son's future wife, please cherish his heart. He's better than the world will ever see. And I whispered to the air, I forgive you, Mom. For leaving. For believing in her. For everything. 3 weeks later, I launched a mentorship program at the company. Not in Vivian's name. Not in mine either. Just as Project 10,000. Open to interns. Freelancers. Displaced workers. Anyone overlooked. It became an instant success. One night, a news outlet covered it and asked for an interview. I sat in the studio, adjusting my tie, trying to stay composed. The host smiled. Alex Avart, creator of Project 10,000. You've inspired millions. What drives you? I thought for a moment. Then said. Someone once told me I wasn't enough unless I could collect 10,000 blessings from strangers. So I did. But along the way, I realized, it wasn't about proving I deserved love. It was about realizing I already did. We all do. The host looked touched. And if that person is watching? She asked gently. I looked at the camera, then shook my head with a small smile. She already knows. Some stories don't end with reunions. Some end with growth. And mine, finally, had begun. 3 months after the broadcast, I became a name people began to recognize, not because of a scandal, or heartbreak, but because of what I built. Project 10,000 expanded faster than anyone expected. What started as a small mentorship initiative grew into a full-fledged talent accelerator. Companies began partnering with us. We provided scholarships, training, housing. We gave second chances to people who had been passed over. And yet, through all the growth, I stayed in the background. No press tours. No red carpets. I didn't need them. I had found purpose. But I hadn't found peace. Not completely. Not yet. One morning, William burst into my office holding a tablet. Alex, he said breathlessly. You need to see this. I looked up from my reports. It's her, he said, handing me the screen. Vivian. She's back. There she was. Vivian Loretta Hart. Clean, simple makeup. Black blouse. Speaking on a small stage at a modest book fair. Not the CEO persona. Not the icy executive. Just her. The headline read. Former CEO turned author opens up about redemption and regret. She talked about stepping away from power. About walking out of her penthouse with nothing but a suitcase and one pair of shoes. About giving away her money. About starting over in a quiet seaside town. I was so used to controlling everything, she said, that I forgot what it meant to feel. When I lost the person I loved most, I realized I had never actually seen him. Just the idea of him. And you cannot love someone if you refuse to see them. I watched in silence. I used to think giving was about money, she continued. But now I understand. Giving means staying when things get hard. It means not walking away when someone needs you most. It means showing up. Every single day. Applause followed. But I didn't clap. I handed the tablet back to William. Thanks, I said simply. He raised an eyebrow. You okay? I'm not angry anymore, I said. That's the strangest part. Days passed. Weeks. I stayed focused on work. On our next phase, expansion into 3 more cities. I signed contracts, approved budgets, and hired specialists. But sometimes, I'd catch myself looking at the ocean through my office window, remembering how she once told me she loved the sea because it didn't hold grudges. That was the kind of love she wanted. But she never offered it. Still, I couldn't deny that her words in the interview had stirred something. One evening, I found myself typing her name into the search bar again. Her book was now in 10 languages. She had started teaching at a community center, mentoring young girls on emotional intelligence and self-worth. Her tone in every video was softer now. Less sharp. Less defensive. Like she had finally laid down the armor. Then, one rainy afternoon, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a message. A real letter. The envelope was cream-colored. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single page. Thick, textured paper. It read. Dear Alex. I didn't know if I should write. I didn't know if you'd even read it. But I needed to try. You were right. About everything. About my arrogance. About my blindness. About what I took from you, not just your money, or your love, but your mother's last chance. I can never undo that. I would give anything to go back to that moment and make a different choice. But the truth is, if I had been the woman you needed then, you would never have lost your mother. And for that, I will carry the weight for the rest of my life. I am not asking for forgiveness. I don't expect redemption. But I do hope that someday, if you think of me, you'll remember something more than just the worst I gave you. You once told me that pain either breaks you or builds you. You built something beautiful, Alex. And I am so proud of you. Even from a distance. Forever grateful for the time you gave me. Vivian. My hands trembled slightly as I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. There was no anger. No blame. Just silence. And the slow echo of grief. Weeks later, I was invited to speak at a summit on leadership and transformation. The keynote was titled How to Build After You've Been Broken. I stood on stage in front of hundreds of executives, innovators, students. The lights were warm. The room was quiet. My story, I began, doesn't start with success. It starts with betrayal. With heartbreak. With the kind of pain that makes you question your own worth. I paused, eyes scanning the crowd. But I want to talk about what comes after. I shared how Project 10,000 was born. How it was never about revenge. It was about proving, to myself, mostly, that what I had to give was more than what had been taken from me. I closed with a line that stayed with me ever since reading that letter. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us what we value. And sometimes, healing is not about hearing "I'm sorry." It's about hearing our own voice say, "I made it anyway." The audience stood. Applause thundered. But I felt calm. Not proud. Not triumphant. Just whole. That night, back in my apartment, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in months. Inside were the blessing slips. All 10,000. Some still wrinkled. Some faded. And the last one, Mom's message, still as clear as ever. I laid them across the floor, just like I did the night before I planned to propose to Vivian. But this time, I didn't think about her. I thought about the man who had once believed that love could be earned through sacrifice. Through suffering. And I realized, I didn't need to collect blessings anymore. I was finally ready to give them. At sunrise, I walked to the beach. The wind was strong, the air crisp. I stood near the water, then slowly let the slips go, one by one. They scattered like petals, like pieces of the past returning to the sky. A quiet goodbye. A gentle release. And with each one, I felt lighter. More myself. More alive. I did not know if I'd ever see Vivian again. And that was okay. Some endings are not about revenge or reconciliation. Some endings are simply endings. So that something new can begin. The first time I saw Vivian again, it wasn't planned. It was a rainy afternoon, nearly 7 months since I left the city behind and began again overseas. I had just finished hosting a roundtable for Project 10,000 and stepped out of the conference center into a drizzle that soaked the pavement in silver. I was halfway across the plaza when I saw her. No cameras. No entourage. Just her. She stood beneath a shared umbrella with a frail elderly woman in a wheelchair. Her arm was around the woman's shoulders, adjusting the blanket on her lap. Vivian's hair was longer. She wore no makeup, and her clothes were simple, a linen dress, sneakers, a light coat. She looked small. Human. She didn't see me. But I saw the change. I didn't stop. I kept walking. My umbrella tilted slightly, enough to shield my face. I didn't need closure anymore, not in the form of confrontation. But fate, as always, had its own plans. Because that night, there was a knock at my hotel door. And when I opened it, there she was. Vivian. Dripping wet. Hair matted to her forehead. Clutching a plastic grocery bag. "I swear this isn't dramatic," she said, breathless. I saw you." I didn't speak. She held up the bag like a peace offering. "Dried plum tea. You used to make it when you worked late." I remembered. I stepped aside wordlessly and let her in. She walked to the table, set the bag down, then turned back to face me. Her eyes searched my face. "You look healthier. You look tired." She gave a weak laugh. "I am." Silence filled the room. Heavy but not sharp. Vivian took a deep breath. "I won't stay long. I just want to say something. One thing. And then I'll leave." I folded my arms, leaning against the wall. "Go ahead." She swallowed. "I understand now. Everything. Back then, I thought love was a transaction. You give, I give. You prove, I reward. But I never realized. You already gave everything. You gave before I even asked." I looked away. She stepped forward. "When I read your interview, the one at the summit, I finally heard your voice. Not the one I used to interrupt. Not the one I filtered through my insecurities. The real one." "And?" I asked. "I cried for 2 days," she said honestly. "Not for losing you. For never seeing you when I had the chance." My throat tightened, but I said nothing. Vivian's voice softened. "Alex. There's a girl I mentor now. 17. Smart. Sharp-tongued. She reminds me of myself. And every time she lashes out, I see all the damage I left behind in others. In you." I looked at her for the first time. She wasn't here for redemption. She was here to lay her burden down. "I'm sorry I let you carry my pain for 5 years, she whispered. "You deserved so much more than I gave." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that." She blinked. "That's it? What were you expecting?" I asked. "A dramatic hug? A kiss in the rain? We're not those people anymore." Her eyes glistened. "You're right." I stepped closer, placing a mug on the table. "But if you want to sit down and drink some tea. Quietly. As two people who once shared something, you're welcome too." She sat. And we drank in silence. Not as lovers. Not as enemies. Just as two people who had finally made peace with the past. After that day, we didn't speak for months. And that, too, was okay. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's not wrapped in fireworks or second chances. Sometimes, it's just the absence of bitterness. But life, ever unpredictable, had more to say. A year later, Project 10,000 opened its 5th international branch. Invitations were sent. Press covered the launch. Partners flew in. And at the gala, while mingling with board members, I saw Sasha. Vivian's friend. She raised her glass. "You're a hard man to catch." I smiled. "Guess I got better at hiding." She laughed. "Vivian sends her congratulations." I nodded. "She doing well?" "She's teaching full-time now," Sasha said. "She bought a small house by the sea. No staff. No drama. Just quiet. Sounds good for her." Sasha leaned in slightly. "You know, she still reads those blessing messages. Said she kept them. All 10,000. My brow furrowed. I thought Marcus threw them out. "He did," she said. "But she dug through the trash and found them. Cleaned each one. She keeps them in a wooden box labeled what love looks like." I didn't know what to say. "She doesn't want anything from you, Alex," Sasha added gently. "But I thought, maybe you'd want to know." I gave a small nod. "Thank you." That night, back in my suite, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were photos from my mother's last trip. I found one taken on the train, a blurry selfie with a stranger. They were smiling. And in the corner of the image was the edge of a paper slip. The 10,000th blessing. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and opened a new message. "Vivian. I don't know if you still keep the box. But I kept the photo. The one of Mom's last blessing. You were right. That's what love looks like. And maybe, that's what healing looks like too. I hope the sea is treating you well. Alex." I never got a reply. But that was fine. Some messages are meant to be read, not answered. And some chapters are meant to close, not reopen. Months later, on the anniversary of my mother's death, I returned to our hometown. I walked the roads we used to travel. Visited the tiny market where she'd buy oranges. Sat by her grave with flowers in silence. And when I stood to leave, I looked out at the sky and whispered, "I'm okay now." Because I was. Truly. For the first time in years. Not because Vivian came back. Not because she said sorry. But because I had finally come back to myself. And that was more than enough. Autumn came early that year. The air was crisp, the trees along the city sidewalks catching fire in reds and golds. Every breath I took tasted like change. A full year had passed since I stepped off that plane to start over. 12 months of building, grieving, learning how to exist without holding on to what used to be. People still asked about Vivian. Not as often now. But sometimes. They remembered the story. The breakup. The public humiliation. The blessing slips. Some saw it as a cautionary tale. Others called it tragic romance. But to me, it had become something else entirely. A chapter. Not the first. Not the last. Just one I no longer needed to reread. I was preparing for the final round of funding proposals for a new tech initiative, one designed to train overlooked youth in rural communities, when William walked into my office again, tablet in hand, same expression as a year ago. "You're not going to believe this," he said. I looked up, raising a brow. He turned the screen to face me. It was a video. A TEDx talk. Vivian Loretta Hart. I felt a pulse in my temple. She stood on a red circular carpet, a single spotlight illuminating her frame. There was something resolute in her posture, a quiet strength I hadn't seen before. No mask. No shield. Just her. She began, "When I was younger, I thought success meant never being questioned. Never apologizing. Never needing help. I wore power like armor, and love like a leash." The audience was silent. "I broke someone good once," she continued. "Someone kind. I asked him to prove his love to me, while I doubted it every step of the way. I turned his sincerity into a challenge. And when he failed to meet my timeline, I called him unworthy. What I didn't realize was that he was never the one failing. I was." I paused the video. For a long time, I just stared at the frozen image of her, hand placed gently over her heart. William didn't say a word. He just nodded once and stepped out, leaving me alone with the silence. That night, I watched the talk in full. It wasn't about us. Not exactly. It was about power. And fear. And what it means to live with regret. But between the lines, I could still hear it. The way she said him. The way her voice caught when she said blessings. The quiet tremor when she said if I could speak to him one last time. By the end of the talk, she looked directly into the camera. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said softly. "I'm here to say that if you ever loved someone and failed them, you can still become someone who would not make that mistake again." The screen faded to black. Applause followed. But my heart was quiet. Not because I was hurt. But because something deeper had finally settled. Respect. Not for who she had been. But for who she had become. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected invitation. A small envelope. Handwritten again. Inside was a formal card. Vivian Loretta Hart invites you to the opening of the Blessing Library, a community space dedicated to letters of hope, forgiveness, and growth. Inspired by 10,000 messages of love. At the bottom, in her handwriting. You don't need to come. But if you do, I'll be grateful. Not as an ex. Not as a woman seeking closure. Just as someone who finally understands what you tried to teach me. The event was held in a quiet coastal town, in a repurposed church. The building had been transformed into a place of reflection. Stained glass had been replaced with panes filled with pressed flower petals. Wooden shelves lined the walls, each one holding envelopes, thousands of them, from strangers who had written to people they loved, or hurt, or lost. A space to lay things down. To let go. I arrived near sunset. Slipped inside unnoticed. Stood at the back. Vivian stood near the front, greeting guests, hugging elderly visitors, helping children hang up their letters. She didn't see me. And that was fine. I walked the room slowly, reading the notes that had been made public. Messages from people who had never found the courage to speak out loud. Fathers asking daughters for forgiveness. Sons thanking their mothers. Partners apologizing for words left unsaid. Each one filled with the kind of raw humanity that left your chest aching. Then, at the far end of the room, on a pedestal of white marble, was a box. A clear acrylic case, filled with slips of paper. My blessing messages. I felt it instantly. Not because of the handwriting. But because I remembered the folds. The tiny creases from strangers who scribbled wishes on trains, at cafes, under umbrellas in the rain. There was a plaque below the case. Donated anonymously by the one who taught me the weight of love. I stood there for a long time. Then I wrote a message of my own and slipped it into the empty box beside the pedestal. Just one line. I made it. And I wish you peace. I didn't wait for her to notice. I didn't wait to be seen. I just left. Because some people don't need to be reunited. They just need to be remembered, with kindness, not pain. Back in the city, a week later, I was offered a board seat at one of the largest educational nonprofits in the country. I accepted. Project 10,000 merged with 2 new initiatives and rebranded globally. We hired 3 new directors. I stepped down as CEO and took on a quieter advisory role. And for the first time in my adult life, I had time to live. I traveled. I read. I cooked badly and laughed at myself. I met new people. Good people. And I started to believe, slowly, that love might still be waiting somewhere ahead, not because I deserved it now, but because I had finally stopped chasing it like a debt owed. One evening, I received a message from Sasha. She's doing well. She saw your note. She cried. Then she smiled. And said, that's more than I ever hoped for. I read the message 3 times. Then I turned off my phone. And watched the city lights flicker through my window like stars I could finally reach. Because forgiveness wasn't something she gave me. It was something I gave myself. And that, in the end, was the true blessing. Spring arrived gently. The air grew warmer. The streets buzzed with life. Flowers crept out from cracks in the concrete, blooming without permission, without apology, as if to remind the world that beauty doesn't ask for approval. It simply arrives. So did peace. Not in grand gestures. Not in apologies wrapped in red ribbons. But in quiet mornings. In steady breath. In the soft way I could say her name now, not with anger, not with regret, but with calm. Vivian. She had become a chapter I no longer reread at night. A story I could finally shelve without bitterness. Not forgotten, but no longer defining. And I had become someone I once only hoped I'd grow into. One evening, after a long hike through the hillside near the northern edge of the city, I came across a small overlook. Below it, the town sparkled in the fading gold of the setting sun. Children laughed somewhere nearby. A distant dog barked. A breeze rustled the grass. I sat on the bench and pulled a folded letter from my coat pocket. I had been writing it for months. One line at a time. Sometimes crossing out entire paragraphs. Sometimes letting the ink dry and not touching it for weeks. Now it was finished. But I didn't send it. Because this one wasn't for Vivian. It was for my mother. Dear Mom. You'd be happy to know I've made something of myself. Something real. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I know we never had time for that last conversation, the one where I'd tell you that everything would be okay. That I would survive losing you. But here I am, standing in a future I once thought impossible, and I want you to know, I kept going. I'm not angry anymore. Not at her. Not at myself. Not even at life. I finally understand what you meant when you used to say, love is not about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. I let go, Mom. And in doing so, I found the parts of me that had been waiting to breathe. I hope wherever you are, you're smiling. I hope you see what your son has become. Not the man chasing someone else's approval. But the man who finally found his own worth. Love always. Alex. I held the letter in my hand for a while. Then, without ceremony, I placed it beneath a stone at the edge of the overlook. A quiet goodbye. A gentle thank you. The next day, I boarded a train headed west. No destination in particular. Just the freedom to go. To move. To explore without looking over my shoulder. And somewhere between cities, I met someone. Not like before. There was no spark disguised as desperation. No flattery disguised as manipulation. Just a woman reading a paperback across from me, sipping tea, smiling at strangers. When she looked up, we exchanged a simple hello. Later, we shared a conversation about books. Then about travel. Then about nothing at all, the kind of nothing that feels safe and unforced. Her name was Lena. She didn't know about the blessing slips. Or the car accident. Or Vivian. Or the grief I carried like a second skin. She only knew me as Alex. A quiet man on a train. Someone who laughed easily. Who listened more than he spoke. Someone at peace. And that was enough. Years from now, if someone asks me what my story was about, I won't talk about heartbreak. I won't talk about betrayal or revenge or grand speeches at airports. I'll say, it was about a man who gave everything he had to love someone, lost her, lost himself, and still chose to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Because in the end, love didn't save me. Letting go did. And that made all the difference.